What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the latest remake to be hitting theaters this weekend, and that film is called Speak No Evil. Directed by James Watkins, who wrote this film alongside the two writers and directors of the original film, Christian and Mads Tafstrup. This film stars people like James McAvoy, Mackenzie, Scoot McNairy, Alex West Leffler, and more. And before we get too far into this, as I just mentioned, this is a remake, and some of you may be questioning, I've never seen the original, where is it from, or maybe you are a fan of the original. The film came out in 2022, and it's part of a growing trend of the things that we're seeing with foreign films that are having a lot of success, that are getting American-made or English-speaking remakes for a wider audience. I'm a little bit torn on that subject. It is cool that the director and writer of the original film, the Danish film, were able to be a part of the writing of this film, so obviously maybe they wanted to make this happen. But we saw this happen earlier this year as well with an Indian film called Kill, that literally the week of its release, when it was getting a lot of buzz, it did really well at the theaters for its first film of its size, and for the fact that it got a lot of good word of mouth. Immediately the week that it came out, it ended up getting picked up for an American remake. And so I'm a little bit torn on that because I'm a big fan of foreign cinema. I've watched plenty and I've covered plenty here on the channel as well. And so while I haven't seen a film like Kill, and nor have I seen the original Speak No Evil, it's a film I heard about and always wanted to check out, I'm a little bit torn on the idea of getting these remakes so shortly after when, I think we should all be going to check out the actual original films that originated these ideas. That's just my thoughts on that. But as I mentioned, I actually haven't seen the original. I intended on checking out the original and doing a review here on the channel before the remake came out, but I just didn't have the best timing this last week when it comes down to videos. So with all that said, we're going to get into my thoughts now on this movie. And it's almost for the best that I haven't seen the original because there's not going to be any sort of comparison. I saw the trailer for this movie a bajillion times. It feels like almost every time I went to the theater, as somebody who goes to the theater once to twice a week, sometimes more, I saw this trailer many times, on top of things like during YouTube ads or any other ads across social media. So I'll start this off by saying that I do think the trailer for this film works against the movie for somebody who goes into this kind of movie having seen the trailer a million times. With that said though, I got to see this movie at an early screening that I was invited to for press, but it also had an audience that was able to show up for a first come first serve kind of thing, so I got to experience this with a full theater, which I will say was probably the best thing. I got to recognize that there was a lot of people in the theater who clearly had not seen the trailer for the movie, and so there were moments that were key to the trailer that I'd seen dozens of times that I felt incredibly spoiled on, that people were really surprised by in the theater. And I think that that's an important thing as somebody who critiques film, is to be able to kind of like look around and see how the film is hitting other people outside of just myself. So with all that said, let's talk about what this movie is all about, and then we'll get into my thoughts on the movie. The movie opens up and focuses on a family played by Scoot McNairy, Mackenzie, and Alex West Leffler. They're the characters of Louise, Ben, and Agnes, and they're on a vacation in Italy having a great old time, and not too long into their vacation, they end up making friends with another family played by James McAvoy, Aisling Franciosi, as well as Dan Hugh, the characters of Patty, Chiara, and Ant. And they build this friendship, they go their separate ways after the vacation, but during that vacation, Patty, played by James McAvoy, said, hey, if you guys ever want to, you guys should come out to where we live and, spend some time with us. We really hit it off. And so they end up getting an invite shortly after their time spent together, and they decide to go in the future to go and spend some time, maybe a weekend, over at Patty and Chiara's house, only for them to quickly discover that these people that they made friends with may end up actually being psychopaths, and they may have found themselves in a very dangerous situation. I won't say much more because, like I said, I do think the trailer shows a little bit too much, and I think that that's one of those situations where my love for film and going to see films too often, or as often as I do, I don't think there's too often, but as often as I do, did work against this film for me. As I was watching the movie, because I had seen the trailer so many times just going to the movies, I feel like I was just kind of checking off a box as I was watching the movie, where all the key moments where I didn't really feel that sense of surprise for a lot of the movie. So the film did feel incredibly predictable to me because a lot of the key moments in this film are in the trailer. And I just think that that's a really frustrating thing that we're seeing in movies these days. With that said though, I think this is a situation where execution was stronger than my expectations, because even though I didn't necessarily have a whole lot of surprise watching the movie, I found myself really engaged with this film in a lot of ways. Like I said, I didn't watch the original film, but one thing that is interesting and worth mentioning here is the film is a little bit longer than that original film, about 15 minutes or so. Of course, that is including credits, but they do add a little bit more to the length here. I can't necessarily speak to what they add in comparison to the original, but it is cool, so I guess there is an element that, does have a little bit more to this film. But what I can start this off by saying in terms of my actual review is that I do think that the film is very well shot, it's very well made, it looks good, and more than anything, what really captivated me with this film are the performances. I think if you've seen the trailer for this film, you know that James McAvoy looks like he's giving it his all, and I think if you're a fan of James McAvoy, without a doubt, he is going to absolutely please you in this film. His performance is the standout of the film, but I want to say the entire cast here is fantastic. Everybody gives incredibly nuanced and realistic performances, and even when the characters are wildly frustrating, which is a big part of this movie, the characters feel so real. I think we know when we look around the world, or people that we come across, people you talk to on social media, that there are a lot of people in this world that can be incredibly naive or not necessarily always make the greatest decisions. And I think that this film really tackles something like that, because we have these enemies here, these villains that the trailer already portrays, this family that are the bad guys that are trying to trap this nice family that ultimately are just doing this because they can. And you have these other individuals in the mix who are just allowing themselves to be victims and consistently putting themselves into dangerous situations. And you as an audience member tend to find yourself frustrated with them, but this is one of those great movies where you were able to kind of just talk to the screen, and it was never obnoxious. Having seen it in a packed theater, which I do think is the best way to watch this movie, there were a lot of people in my theater that were just gasping and, oh no, don't go there, or don't do this. It led to a lot of great moments of levity within the theater that allowed the audience to feel like we were all going on a ride together. There were moments in the film that are also really funny. I thought there were some great moments of humor between the characters amidst the really tense and crazy and scary situations that they're in, but there were so many moments that allowed the audience to kind of talk to the screen and be like, no, don't do that, don't do this, oh no, why would they do that? There's so many moments that I think really lent itself to an experience with people. And while I found this to be a movie that has frustrating characters at the center, I do think that the actors do a lot to make it all feel very natural and like real people that are making naive or weird choices, but believable choices. Maybe something that you're going to be like, I would never do that. Oh, that's a, why would they do that? But like, it's one of those things where you feel like you can understand that, yeah, there's probably somebody who would make that decision out in the world, especially in a high tension situation like these characters find themselves in. So you have solid cinematography, you have an eerie score that's added to this film, and great performances. And despite the fact that I found the film to be wildly predictable and the trailer ruined it for me, it was nice to be in a theater packed with people who were surprised by these moments, and it just felt like we were all on a ride together enjoying these moments. And as by the time we get to the third act of the film, where there's a lot more going down and a lot more, thankfully, that isn't in the trailer for this movie, I found myself having the most fun with the movie, just being able to kind of be on that journey with an audience. With all that said, this is one of those movies I can't necessarily see myself wanting to revisit too many times on my own. It's not going to be a comfort horror watch in a lot of ways, just because the characters can be incredibly frustrating and the writing is on the wall for the audience in so many moments. There are so many moments where you're just like, you can't side with the characters because the decisions they're making and the way that they're acting a lot of times can be incredibly frustrating. But this is going to be a fun movie that I can see people being like, hey, I saw this movie, let me take my uncle or my aunt or my dad who's really reactive to go check out this movie, because I think it will be one of those movies that's a lot of fun to show people, to watch their reactions to what's going on, especially if they don't know. When this movie is years down the line and people are catching it on streaming and don't necessarily have the freshness of the marketing of this film out in front of them, I think they're going to have a lot of fun kind of discovering a lot of the surprises of this film as time goes on. With all that said, you can tell I'm a little bit torn in certain areas, because clearly I saw the trailer a million times. So I never got to really experience that surprise with this film. It really was, for me, more about the execution, which I do think really is done well. The performances, the filmmaking here is solid, and there are some fun twists and turns that are not in the trailer, as well as some great moments of tension that I'm always appreciative of. Even though I saw this movie's writing on the wall a million times, and I saw everything happening ahead of time, it was one of those situations where I found myself engaged in the film still because of how the film was made and how the performers added to these sequences. And overall, man, I just got to really praise two of the performers in particular. I think everybody was great here, but two of the main performers you got to praise, of course, James McAvoy. He's on the poster. He's the main face that's being marketed here. He is so good at playing crazy, and he is phenomenal in this film, absolutely showcasing why he's one of the most beloved actors of our day. And outside of him, the other family's main character that I was really focused on was Mackenzie Davis's character, Louise. I thought that she was incredible. She does such a great job of giving incredibly realistic authentic performances throughout the course of the film. She feels like a real person. She feels tangible. There are so many moments where you, I think as an audience member, will relate to her facial reactions to some of the things that are happening around, which oftentimes led to some of the funniest moments in the film, but also in my theater at least led to some of the biggest cheers in the theater with some of the things that she does and the way that she performs a lot of these sequences. Without a doubt, the two of them are the biggest standouts of this film for me, but I do think the cast as a whole is really good, and I definitely want to praise the young boy in this film who plays the character of Ant as well. He's played by Dan Hugh, who has only been in a couple television episodes before this. This is his first feature-length film, and you know, for a young kid, which sometimes is kind of hit or miss when it comes to movies, I thought he did an incredible job here with his performance. I thought he was very nuanced, brought a lot of depth behind his characters, a lot of pain behind his eyes, and I thought that he captured that very, very well. So with all that said, Speak No Evil is a film that I think kind of warranted its existence despite my thoughts on remakes coming from foreign films so shortly after. I think the performances here really elevate the material. I got to see the film with my mom as well, which I should mention. She came as my +1 to the screening, and she had a blast. She loved the movie, but she also hadn't seen the trailer as much as me. So keep that in mind. If you're watching this and maybe you haven't seen a trailer, or maybe you just kind of saw it once and you kind of forgot about it and you're just interested in checking it out, go see the movie without revisiting the trailer. Don't do that thing of like, well, let me see the trailer again and see if I want to. No, the trailer shows way too much, and it did ruin it for somebody like me who saw it a bajillion times, where I was just kind of checking off those moments in my head. But the film is executed well. It's well shot. It's well made. It's filled with tension. It's got a great sense of score. The locations used are beautiful. There's some great wide shots of some great scenic locations as well. And those performers just really elevated every single moment, adding to great moments of tension and a great moments with an audience. This is going to be a movie I look forward to showing other people in the future, even if it's not one I can necessarily see myself just throwing on when I'm chilling at home or around Halloween season, kind of throwing it on for fun once I've already seen it multiple times. I find myself frustrated with the characters, but very entertained by the film. So that's going to be my thoughts on Speak No Evil. Definitely looking forward to hearing all of your guys' thoughts, so hit that like button down below if you guys enjoyed the video, and comment your thoughts. Are you planning on checking out this remake? Have you seen the original? How does it compare? Whatever the case may be, leave some comments down below. Let me know your guys' thoughts, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.